Hello, 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 and welcome back to the IBS Freedom Podcast. I am joined by none other than Amy Hollenkamp.
Hello, everybody. I'm excited to be here again, as usual.
And this is a just for fun episode, guys. So if you're hoping to learn anything or talk about anything academic, go ahead and skip this one. And if you just want to hang out with us for a little bit, then stick around because we're going to have a little party and we're just going to have a just for fun chit-chatty episode, maybe tell some stories and see where the evening takes us. But first and foremost, I sent Amy a little something in the mail. So go ahead and bust that bad boy out. And this will be part of the episode. You'll see.
This is very well taped. Let's see if I can...
Oh, I do remember laughing about that and saying that you would never get it open, actually. Yeah.
See if I can use my pregnancy strength. Which is weak.
One of my favorite things to do since the pandemic is if I mail like a letter or a package, I tape it really well. And then like before I put the tape on, I write down, not licked, not even a little bit.
Oh, yeah. I've seen that on some of your cards. You've sent me stuff before.
Yep.
Uh-oh. Let's see.
Let's see what we got.
Oh my goodness. We got little onesie.
It's a baby shower. Did you notice this in the background?
Oh my god! I did notice that. I didn't know if that was like just your last day in office or...
Nope.
Wow, look at this little avocado onesie.
Little avocado.
Oh my god, I love it so much.
And then to really get the celebration mood going, because we are celebrating, I am assembling my hat, so go ahead and put yours on.
Okay.
For those of you who are not on YouTube, once again, you're missing out, but I got poop emoji paper hats for the celebration. Although, I will be honest, it's a little tricky to put them together. Here we go. Okay, I got mine.
I'm going to get mine. Hold on.
There we go. You can't... Yeah, I guess you can see that on camera. And I sent 3 because I didn't want Armand and Chip to feel left out. So I sent a few just in case.
I stapled mine.
Cheater. Let
me take off my hat. My other hat.
I would have gone hat over hat personally, but there. Look, now it's officially a party.
Wow. Let me adjust my camera so you can see my hat.
There was another accessory, if you will, which I also have one for myself, so we could match.
Oh, yes. Oh, I love this.
This you'll have to keep away from the baby for obvious reasons. It says, sometimes all you need to feel better about life is a good poop. And it's a picture of a sloth pooping at the base of the sloth's tree. So I don't know where I could put this where it won't rattle and sound weird on the microphone, but we're going to try it out anyway. I'm going to put it right about here. And hopefully it doesn't do weird things with the audio. But look, now it's a party officially.
There we go. Mine's kind of behind the mic.
Yeah,
I love it.
I know that it's there, and that's all that matters.
Then we have a book.
Yes. So remember many episodes ago, we were talking about the cicadas, and then I don't remember. Did you make little girl's name public on social media yet?
I have. Cecilia.
Okay. Well, that was the closest I could get to Cecilia.
Right. This is pretty good.
It's actually a pretty cute book. Like, Jess and I have read it. We had gotten it a while back, but I was like, nope, I'm plucking that out of the library before we packed up all of our boxes and stuff. I was like, nope, that's pretty close to the name you chose, and the cicadas seemed very apropos. So
I love it.
Yeah.
Well, this is cute. This is a cute surprise. Thank you.
You're welcome. Congrats on the new phase of life.
Oh, man. Just, ready to push this baby out soon. Not too soon.
Yeah.
But it's we'll let her cook a little bit in there. But I always laugh because we have this like baby bookie thing where like my family members are all betting on like you bet on the sex. Like, this is before we released that it was a girl, but you bet on the sex, you bet on the weight, the length.
Oh, okay.
The time of day, the date, and then like the time of the birth, and then the algorithm kind of like puts it together and decides on the winner when the baby's born. But I always laugh at the people that choose like the super heavy babies. I'm like, no,
like, you hate me, don't
Mom, you? Like, I don't want the 9-ounce baby, or sorry, the 9-pound baby.
I love that that's your definition of a heavy baby, because I told you how much I weighed at birth,
you were like 10 pounds, right?
No, I was 11 pounds, 14 ounces. I was enormous. I was literally a 3-month-old when I was born.
Your poor mother.
I know. Well, it was a C-section, but but still, yeah. They were like, well, it was great because normally with a newborn, you're kind of worried that you're going to break them, and they were like, we never had to worry about that with you.
My gosh.
Like, we never feared that we were going to break you.
Well, I was laughing when we were on our honeymoon in Hawaii. That we had this driver that like drove us through the road to Hana, which is like the famous kind of road in Maui. And he was like this big Polynesian guy, probably like 6'10", and just wide, like, you know, huge. Yeah. And like big, strong looking. And he said his mom never had like 17 kids, no joke, and they were all over 13 pounds. Could you imagine?
No. Oh, that poor woman. Bless her
but
soul.
But he said his mom, again, was like, you know, 6'3" and a big lady too. So maybe.
But still, like, I'm 6 feet tall, and my daughter was 7 pounds, 14 ounces, and that took every fiber of everything in my soul to push that kid out vaginally. Like, I can't even imagine if she was bigger than she was. And I'm not a petite human being. Like, I'm 6 feet tall. So I don't know. I think the combination of she was a big woman and also apparently a superhero. Like, that's intense.
Right. And she had like 17 kids too. Like, she just didn't quit. God. She just kept on going.
Oh my gosh. No, I cannot wrap my head around that at all.
Right.
I literally scared my mom. Like, because they say if you have more than one, that the second baby is like a pound heavier than the first one. And my mom did the math and was like,
right.
No.
Well, it's so funny you say that, because my mom, it was the opposite. My mom, her first was the biggest, and then we gradually got smaller. I was the third. Weirdly, I'm the tallest girl. We have 3 girls and 1 boy in our family. And I'm the tallest girl, but I also, like the doctor, I was really teeny tiny at like 1. I wasn't even like on the growth charts. I was so tiny. I was like the opposite of you.
Yeah.
Where
I was born a giant.
Right.
And I just stayed a giant.
I was teeny tiny. I was like kind of a normal size baby. I was in the 7-pound range. I don't know exactly where I was in there, but a normal size baby. But at 1 year old, I like wasn't on the charts, and the doctors kept being like, we might want to do like some chromosomal tests on her just to like see what's going on, why she's so small. But my parents were like, no, she's fine. Because in the meantime, I'm like trying to rip apart the doctor's office. I'm running around. Like, I'm very like advanced motor wise. I'm talking, you know, like there's no other issues outside. I was just teeny tiny. But it's just funny because I grew up to be the tallest of the girls in my family, but I was like kind of the smallest 1-year-old.
And it makes you wonder like how valid the concern is when like kids aren't hitting milestones or following like the growth charts and stuff. I mean, I do think maybe like if your kid was always tracking in about the same place on the growth chart and then all of a sudden it like plateaus or plummets, then like start wondering about like celiac disease, that sort of stuff. But yeah, that's really curious. No, I was the opposite. I was like in the 99th percentile or whatever.
Right.
All my life. And actually, apparently when I was a baby or like a really young kid, some doctor somewhere speculated that I would be 6'2". And my dad was like, yes, basketball player.
Right.
And I did grow up to be a little bit over 6 feet tall. Like, I'm not quite 6'1", but I'm like a hair over 6 feet tall. But like, I suck at basketball though. That was not my
Right.
sport of choice. So my poor dad was maybe a little bit disappointed, I'm sure.
Well, it's funny because I played basketball my whole life, and I was always like, I wasn't necessarily short. Like, I think, I don't know what average woman is. Is it like 5'5", 5'6"? Is that average?
I think so, yeah.
I might be slightly below average there, because I'm like 5'4", 3/4", like somewhere in there. I'm like 5'5"-ish, so I'm pretty average height, but basketball-wise, I was kind of short.
Yeah.
So it always sucked because, like, everything's limited, like, scholarship-wise, that kind of thing, because of your height. Like, height is so... And everyone, like, tacks on extra inches. Like, it's so funny. It's like the men with dating profiles are tacking on extra inches.
Yep.
The same thing with, like, basketball players. They're all tacking on, like, an extra, like, what's your basketball height? Yeah. And it would be like, oh, well, I'm definitely 5'6", which, like, I definitely was not. But that would be what all the programs would say. I
don't know if that happens with rowing. I don't know. But I do remember still, like, one of the shortest players on rowers on my team, aside from the coxswains, right? Because they're teeny tiny, the people who yell at you to go faster and steer the boat. But, like, one of the shorter rowers on our team was my roommate for a few years. And she was 5'8". And all of us were like, oh, teeny little Jackie. Right. Teeny tiny, 5'8" Jackie. Because a lot of us were like, 5'10", 5'11", 6 feet, like that kind of range.
Right. And in rowing, does that just give you a lot more leverage?
Yep.
And that's kind of why you want to be taller with rowing.
Yeah, exactly. Because it's twofold, like, because basically with rowing, you like scrunch your body up. Hold on, I'm going to get tangled in my own microphone. But like, I don't think you can see much, but you basically like scrunch yourself up so your knees are kind of tucked into your chest. And then the first part of the stroke, you put your legs down. So like you get the added length from your legs, but also like you're reaching like past your knees in the beginning of the stroke. So if you have long arms, that's nice too, because then you could reach that much further. So yeah, it's the long legs and long arms both are advantageous for rowing.
Right. Well, I think our baby's going to be a little bit of a nugget because Armand's like 5'9", and
that's about average.
I'm like, again, maybe about average for a girl, but we're both kind of like stockier looking. Mm-hmm. Like I think of myself as being somewhat stocky, and he's again like strong, like kind of built. We always say he's built a little bit like an ox. Like he's just like a solid mass. I don't know how else to describe it. So I think our kid's gonna be a bit of a nugget.
Sturdy.
Sturdy little nugget. I'll let them play any sport, but maybe I'll try to coerce them to the sports that won't dock you for being on the shorter end of the spectrum. Yeah. But knowing kids, they always choose like the sport that will eventually it'll be disadvantageous for things that they can't control, like their height.
And I swear, if you have a kid like my child, like, we have to be very cautious letting our preferences and opinions be known, because Jess will do the opposite just to mess with us. I swear. And it's even worked a couple of times recently, like just using reverse psychology and being like, oh, I hope you don't do this. And then she totally does it. I'm like, yes. I know I'm only going to get limited mileage out of that. But similarly, Jess was having this issue. Like the backs of her hands were really dry and really red. And I will tie this into something related to our podcast for once, actually. So maybe there is a nugget to be had. I will admit, like, there was that little part of my brain for the last few weeks with the hand stuff where I was like, oh, it's eczema. She must have a food sensitivity.
Right.
And again, like, we've talked about this so many times, and I have like Instagram reels on this. Like, I'm pretty well past my food fear phase, but it's still ingrained in your brain between the internet and functional medicine that like, oh, that must be a food reaction. And I found myself contemplating like, oh, I know like Cyrex has a saliva panel that includes like reactivity to gluten, eggs, and dairy. Maybe I should order that. And I was like, no, just stop. And it's like, think about things more logically. And I realized, oh, we're still dealing with the pandemic stuff. And
Right.
like her current school, especially like the Chapel Hill School District, it's very, very like leftist and very like everybody wears masks, everybody does everything, and like
Right.
sanitizer 500 times a day, wash your hands 500 times a day. Like they're still acting like it's like April 2020 in
Right.
Chapel Hill.
Right.
And it occurred to me, I was like, oh, maybe she's reacting to like one of the soaps or one of the sanitizer. And sure enough,
Right.
like we kind of talked to her a little bit and talked to her teachers. And Jess, when we asked her, she estimated that they use hand sanitizer like 10 times a day.
Oh
And we're
my
like,
gosh.
whoa. So anyway,
Right.
so long story short, like the teacher got a different kind of soap for the classroom. And we like sent along a different sanitizer for her to use. And my mom got like vitamin E oil and was just like slathering her hands in vitamin E oil. And like now her hands are fine. But it is weird how the brain lesion kicks in and you're like, oh, she must be gluten sensitive or something. And I started like contemplating that almost automatically when something happened to my kiddo.
Right.
Oh, sorry.
Go
One
ahead.
last piece to the story. So I also placed an order with the company that makes Loricidin because they have like some lotions and soaps and stuff with the Loricidin stuff in it. And I was like, whatever, like, let's just throw everything at it. But I knew that if I told her that I got these, she would probably not go for it because grandma got the vitamin E oil and grandma knows best. So I literally, like, I brought home the box when it arrived because I had it shipped to my office. I brought it home that night and I was like, oh, grandma sent this. Like, thank you, grandma. And we got my mom on video chat and like totally lied to my child.
Right.
And it was like, oh, this is really great, grandma. Thank you for getting this. And my mom was like, yeah, you're welcome. Totally.
Right.
Jess fell for it hook, line, and sinker. She's like, oh, like the grandma soap is the best and the grandma lotion is the best. And I was just like, I know I can only get away with blatantly lying to my child so many times in her life, but I'm so grateful that I have the grandma card and I can be like, yeah, look what grandma sent in the mail.
Oh my gosh. Well, and I think you're dead on with sometimes we always go to like, we miss some of the obvious things that are right in front of us that are at play. I think like one of the big ones is just stress. I think can be one of those that like we're not necessarily thinking about that can lead to symptoms and or just like weird changes and things. But again, we can easily sort of brush past some of the really obvious things for like the sexy things or the fancy things or like, oh, I need this supplement.
Like, or like the things that our little PTSD brain goes back to.
Right.
It's like that groomed circuitry. And when we have like a similar kind of triggering moment, we're just like, oh, right back to that place. I think that that's part of it. I think also like I did realize that stress might be part of it also because so the hand thing kind of started, I got the timeline a little fuzzy now, but I think the hand thing started for a week or 2 or 3. And then we told Jess that we were moving and like we're moving to a new town. And that means that she's going to have a new school, new friends, new teacher, etc.
Right.
And like right after that, she started having an issue with frequent urination going all the time, like little tiny amounts. Like it was almost like a UTI, but I would ask her like, is there burning? Is it painful? And she would deny it. And we were keeping an eye on her hydration. And like, she wasn't like drinking a ton and then peeing a ton like you would see with diabetes. It was like she was drinking a normal amount, but she was going to the bathroom like these little piddly amounts, like 200 times a day. I don't even know.
Right.
And, I reached out to her pediatrician and started talking about doing a urinalysis just to make sure. But then it occurred to me, oh, it's stress. And I had my mom, again, like grandma is clutch here. I had grandma kind of talk to Jess about like, oh, like, how are you feeling about the move? And outwardly, she had been saying that she was excited for the move and excited for the new house, especially. But then grandma got her to open up and she's like, well, like, I am kind of scared because I haven't seen the house yet. Only mom and dad have seen it.
Right.
And I can't really picture my new life because I haven't seen it yet. And I kid you not. So this was like 2 weekends ago. So I told my mom, I was like, okay, tell her we'll drive around the neighborhood and we'll drive and see if we can pop in the house and check it out. And sure enough, like we took her there, we let her run around the inside of the house. Like it wasn't ready to move in yet, but the neighbors were able to let us in. And she ran around like a crazy child in the house, checking everything out. We took her to a park. We drove past her new school. We drove through the neighborhood. Immediately, like literally that day, the frequent urination problem completely subsided.
Right.
I was like, okay, yep. I was pretty sure it was just like nerves and stress coming up, but that proved it.
Right. Yeah, again, I think that's why it's good not to just get super locked into like one thing with any sort of health change. It's like you want to make sure you're able to rule out potential other factors too, but it's so easy, I think, at times to have that trauma brain come up.
Yeah.
Where it's like, oh my God, it's another food sensitivity. Did I ever tell you too about my first food sensitivity experience? Did I ever tell you about this?
No, I don't think so.
So I honestly think like back when my gut issues were really starting to flare, it was like pre-SIBO diagnosis. Mm-hmm. But I'd been to like I think it was between when I went to the GI doc and then functional medicine. I was like, okay, this isn't working. And I have an ENT that lived in my old neighborhood, and she's kind of a family friend, and she was kind of one of those practitioners that was like dabbling in some of the functional stuff, but like still pretty conventional at the same time. But she was doing like ALCAT testing for food sensitivity stuff. And I just remember going to this appointment and we did the food sensitivity test. She could see I was having a little bit of reflux at that particular time. And she was like, let's just do this test. Well, again, a million things come up on the test. And you're like, I don't know what to make of this. And the actual instructions were so crazy, like in terms of how I'm supposed to be rotating foods. I don't know if you've seen those instructions before, but it's like, I don't know who in their right mind, like I was a very compliant client, but I don't know how, like who could have the time and energy to rotate the foods in the way that was in the ALCAT test. It was
especially
crazy.
When it's 50 million foods.
Right.
If it's like 3, like you could rotate 3 foods just fine, but that's the thing. Those tests almost never come back with 3 foods. It's like 30.
Right, exactly. But
and then good luck. Can you imagine also trying to find a recipe that would make sense with these kind of rotations too? Of like, okay, today I'm allowed to eat the following, and therefore I need a recipe that includes the following. All right, today is my day that I can have garlic and chocolate and chicken and shrimp and sweet potatoes and it's like this hodgepodge of a thing, and you're like, I mean, it could make you a really creative cook on the one hand.
Well, and again, like I think every meal has to be like hodgepodge, like nothing really goes together then. But I just remember just that whole experience being like, what the heck am I supposed to do with this? And she had like a nurse or something that I met with after, but even the nurse was just like, follow this, follow the instructions in here.
Good luck.
I don't. Right. So it was, it's so interesting that just those tests, I know we've kind of ranted about them, but just how, I don't know. But again, it gets you in the mindset, like what you're saying, where you'll start seeing like, oh, is this little patch of dry skin something I need to have a food sensitivity test for? Is this acne that's popping up of food sensitivity, or is it just stress or something else? You can get very locked in on that.
It's not to say that having a food sensitivity, like it's not that those don't exist, right? And it's not to say that like there are plenty of people who could benefit from cutting out like 1 or 2 foods, like some of the allergenic ones like dairy or eggs or gluten or something. Even if it's for like a few months at a time, like that could definitely be beneficial. But yeah, I've seen results that come back and it's literally like you're intolerant to blueberries and iceberg lettuce. Right. And it's like, what is in iceberg lettuce that could ever be allergenic to anyone? It's literally 99.999% water. This is stupid. And I feel like that was one of the turning points for me when I saw iceberg lettuce come up. Or like romaine lettuce come up on one of these. And I was like, no, this just makes no sense whatsoever. But I think that actually there's two things that you just kind of touched on. A is like the validity and the usefulness of those tests is debatable at best. Right. Again, we have a whole episode on food sensitivity tests. So like that's if you want a whole hour long discussion on that, definitely check that out. But B, there is this weird sort of thing that happens in particular with functional medicine where like you can run into people who dabble. And it's this weird kind of place. I'm not intrinsically pro or anti this because if you think about it, if we say that nobody is allowed to dabble in stuff like this, like trying out some different testing or trying out supplements, like then those practitioners would never learn and they would never get out of their like conventional setting or whatever. Right. Or like the chiropractor or the acupuncturist or the doctor or the whoever who goes to one functional medicine seminar and wants to try to help their patients more. Like I get that. And I get that that's how you learn is like you start practicing and applying the stuff, but also that's kind of a crappy situation to be in as a patient when you have somebody who's literally like, yeah, this is brand new to me. Let me use you as a guinea pig. Let's hope for the best. And oh, by the way, this test costs like $300-400 or whatever. And I don't even know how to use it. And I don't even know how to guide you. Like I see both sides of it and it is dicey. I remember though, one that I feel like if you're practicing on your existing patients or clientele and you're just open and honest with like, hey, this is still really new to me, but I really think this could help you. That's one thing. But what bugs the crap out of me is when people advertise that they do functional medicine or they do like nutritional counseling or something when they have taken one seminar and they use that as like marketing. I remember a colleague who like, I don't think ill of her. Like she was a friend from school. She reached out and was like, hey, I finally registered for this Apex Energetics seminar. I'm really excited. I think it was the thyroid one. And I was like, that's great. Congrats. You're going to love it. It's really great. And then I kid you not, she asked me, hey, once I take this one seminar about the thyroid, can I call myself a functional medicine doctor? And can I advertise that I do functional medicine? And I was like, like, technically, legally, you could, because there's literally nobody stopping you. Right. Like, there's no governing body that has any real, like, legal clout. Like, the IFM can't sue you if you say you did functional medicine, but you didn't take their classes. And, like, there's no licensing body for functional medicine specifically. But, like, you really shouldn't advertise that you do functional medicine unless you're getting pretty good at it and you have a good working understanding of how all of the body systems connect. And I basically told her this. I was like, well, that seminar is going to teach you a lot about the thyroid and you're going to touch on things like blood sugar and inflammation and the brain. But like, even if you have a thyroid patient come to see you, you're still not going to have all the tools to help that person. So like, in my opinion, no, you should not advertise that you're a functional medicine doctor after you take one freaking seminar. But, and I don't even know what she ended up doing. I don't know if she's even in practice still, but I was just like, this is problematic. Like, again, if if you're like open and honest and you start using some of this information with your existing patients, I feel like that's okay. But if you're like specifically bringing people into your clinic saying that you do functional medicine and you have taken one or two seminars, like, that's iffy.
Right. Yeah, and I think sometimes you have the other end of the coin where some practitioners like have a lot of experience or again like have done a lot of trainings and are a little nervous about like jumping in to the functional medicine. Like we'll say like, oh, I'm an expert in this field. Or again, like they get a little bit like I don't know, less confident
like
about diving
imposter syndrome.
Right, imposter syndrome. Like again, I'll see some like dietitians that are like have been doing work in a particular niche for like 10 years and don't consider themselves like an expert in that field. So I think again, like there's definitely two very weird ends of the coin with practitioners that I've seen where some sort of don't really are seeing SIBO, IBS patients and again, don't necessarily have a great hold on SIBO, might know like some protocols that they heard. But are not necessarily experts at SIBO. And I think that that's kind of being able to say like, okay, I know this much about SIBO, but here's my limitation. I think sometimes there's a little bit of that going on, but I also think, and I see it a lot with dietitians too, it's like they have a niche and maybe part of it is, I think women are a little bit more prone to have imposter syndrome than men. Not saying men can't have imposter syndrome, but I think dietitians being that it's a heavily female field might be why I see it a little bit more frequently. And again, I'm a dietitian, so I guess I would interact with more dietitians in general too, but
and I agree with you. I think it's like two ends of this, it's two sides of the same coin. Like on the one hand you have the people and to be clear too, like the friend from chiropractic school that I mentioned that reached out, like that was a woman and she was just like so it's not to say that all women have imposter syndrome and maybe she does on some level, but like she again, like she hadn't even taken the one seminar yet. She had signed up for it. She had paid for it, but she hadn't sat there and learned the stuff yet. And she was already like, all right, I'm going to print up some business cards. I'm going to get people in the door.
Like, and how can I market this?
Yeah, like it's cringy, you know?
Right.
I don't know. We're all just trying to do the best we can with what we've got. But I do, this is where I say like on a monthly basis, I love the internet and I hate it so much.
Right.
So much. Because on the one hand, like the internet brings to you the IBS Freedom Podcast and all of these great resources and like, you know, all of the stuff that you can learn on the internet and online courses and Instagram and YouTube. Like it's wonderful. And yet they'll let Eddie Jamo have a website and they'll let anybody have an Instagram and a YouTube and a podcast. And there's nobody like doing quality control and checking people who are being misleading.
Right. Well, and again, I think it's always hard to know where that line is at times. Or again, like how much to police that. I think, again, the internet is, like what you said, you almost have to be an intelligent consumer about, and even the most intelligent consumers can go down some rabbit holes that might not be optimal for them. But I think the more kind of you're aware of, you know, who's selling what and that kind of thing.
Well, even
and
like,
again, go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say, like, yeah, then that's a huge motivator. Like, is this person going to make money? Like when we talked about Dr. Ruschio putting down.
Hold on. I'm adjusting my hat.
There you go.
Okay.
The poop hat. It is.
Right.
It's bringing my heart joy to see that poop hat on your head.
Pretty great.
Not going to lie. But you know, like when we talked about Dr. Ruschio putting down prokinetics and then conveniently in the next Instagram post, pushing you toward his elemental heal product. Like, I don't know. That's pretty sus, as the kids would say, right? Like he's obviously trying to push you towards the thing that will make him money. Or like the Amy Myers thing we talked about more recently. Like she's clearly trying to poo-poo, pun intended, all of the other probiotics. I suspect because she really wants you to buy her special probiotic and she wants to discredit all of the competition so that you feel more compelled to buy hers.
Yeah, and I think there's whenever you're selling anything, I think you have to make a little bit of an argument. So there is, like, again, I think an ethical way to do it.
Mm-hmm.
I think sometimes with the private label stuff, the kind of the private label side of the functional medicine space where people are sort of taking other formulas and just slapping their name on it, that gets a little weird. I think from how to ethically maneuver that as a practitioner, I wouldn't want the responsibility of trying to manage that, just because it's such a precarious standpoint. I think it's such a precarious issue from an ethics standpoint that I just wouldn't want to dabble in it at all.
Well, you know why they do it though, right?
Well,
there's just so you
to make some money.
Well, yeah, but specifically, if I sell you a bottle of Nikki's super amazing probiotic and you don't know that it's the same stuff that you can get from Designs for Health or Zymogen or whatever, that prevents you from going on Amazon or iHerb or any of those websites to get your damn refills. So they're making money not only in that moment, but they're guaranteeing that if you want to stay on that product, you have to get it through them. Because you're not going to be able to get Dr. Nikki's magic pooping pills from anywhere else other than Dr. Nikki's magic pooping pill office. So
makes like a long-term customer.
Yeah. Which and it's fine. I get why doctors and dietitians and people in our field would not want people buying stuff off of Amazon, because quite frankly, I have identified some very clearly fraudulent products and counterfeit products. I wrote an article on my blog years ago about this, but I looked on Amazon as an example, and I saw, I typed in Biotics Research, Beta Plus, which is like their ox bile beetroot kind of combo product. And they had a bottle on Amazon for sale, and it was a 360 count bottle. But then you go on the Biotics website, like through my account, like my practitioner account, and I searched for that product name. They only sell it in 90 count and 180 count. They do not make a 360 count bottle. Where the hell did that one come from? Presumably, if we're giving the seller absolute benefit of the doubt and assuming that they are like a really good, wonderful person, then that means that person bought 2 bottles of the 180 count product, manufactured a bottle and a label for the 360 count bottle. And they're just good people. And they're just taking the couple bottles of 180 count, pouring it into a bigger container, and then selling it to you for cheaper out of the goodness of their heart. I guarantee that's not happening. What probably is happening is that somebody had expired product, or it's a fraudulent product that they made and they're trying to pass it off as a Biotics product. And then they're putting that label on it and they're selling it to you. But and when I did this article, it was a few years back, I did screen caps of the Amazon listing versus what you can see in my portal when I log in my practitioner account. It's they do not make this. So why is this on Amazon? And similarly, you see reviews all the time. If you sift through the 1-star reviews and stuff, you can find people saying no, this is a counterfeit product. I've actually bought this from Whole Foods or directly from the company before or directly from my doctor. This is not the same product. It smells different. It looks different. But Amazon's not really regulating that. Anybody can have an Amazon store.
It's kind of scary. It's a scary. What could be in the pills too? It's not even that it's a different product per se. It's what are they filling fake capsules? Potentially with too, which is a little bit nerve-wracking. Again, a lot of times I feel if they're going to do a counterfeit, it's rice granules or something. Again, it's something kind of benign,
it's rice
but
flour or something.
Rice flour.
Well,
but
and here's
know.
the thing too is even if you think oh, but there's all these 5-star reviews. Yeah, but the placebo effect cures people 30% of the time. Across the board in all of medical research, placebo works about 30% of the time. So you're going to have some people who are oh, this is great. And you can buy 5-star reviews on Amazon. You can pay people to write reviews for your product. So it's, I try very, very hard to not get supplements on Amazon. And similarly, like, I don't have a ton of faith in companies like iHerb or those other companies either. So, like, I get it why these practitioners don't want their patients buying products off Amazon, because then you know what that means. If I tell you that I think that you're going to feel better if you buy echinacea and this one particular probiotic and I don't even know, like grapeseed extract. I don't even know. Like, this is some imaginary weird protocol I just made. But if I tell you to buy these 3 things, thinking that it'll make you feel better, and then you buy the 3 things and then you don't feel better, you know who you're going to be mad at? Me! You're going to think that I'm bad at my job and I didn't make the right protocol for you. And if you feel bad because it's a counterfeit product and it's full of rice flour or whatever, or gluten flour, if you feel worse, likewise, you're going to think I recommended something bad. So it's ultimately on me and my credibility and like my respect as a professional. If you don't feel better based off something I recommend, you're probably going to be pissed at me, not assume that the supplement is a bad supplement. So again, like, I get it. Like, I get why practitioners don't want their patients to buy stuff off Amazon. But at the same time, the private labeling stuff is super sketchy because it's dishonest. You're lying. You're saying that you made this proprietary fancy product when you did not. And it's making you look like a bigwig who knows how to formulate supplements when in fact you are not. You're just slapping your own label on a bottle, and like any dum-dum with a printing machine can slap a label on a product and call it your own. So like, I'm just so conflicted.
Well, and it's one thing too, I think it's one thing too to just have full transparency about that, because I don't think I'd really have an issue if it was like, oh, this is kind of the same formulation as this, and you know, I just wanted to kind of bring it to my people or whatever it is. But again, that doesn't happen. There's not really tons of transparency around it. But yeah, it's a tricky area.
It's weird.
I had a question for you about like Jess and her eating, like learning to acclimating to different foods, like with babies.
Mm-hmm.
So like when you, I know, again, I haven't done as much research outside of just what I learned in school, but like in terms of, do you remember the process that you did for adding foods in?
Yeah. And you're still a ways away from that, so I probably
I'm just curious. Again, I've been asking people about it. My sister just went through it. She again did some different, like, she did some sort of program. I don't know how it exactly compares.
You were saying it's like packages or something, and it's like exposing them to the allergens, but in particular doses and stuff. Am I remembering that right?
Yeah. So like it was like that. It was some sort of program where she ordered kind of like sachets of everything, and they gave her like their specific amount. So it was interesting, but I was just curious.
I feel like that's overly complicated and overly pricey for what you actually want to do.
Could be.
Probably.
Could be.
But if somebody's like anxious about that process and that gives you comfort to do it that way, then sure. Like I'll actually lead with a story about a friend instead, and then I'll share my own. So when my friend was introducing nuts to her baby, I think she was a little bit nervous because he was born via C-section and her pregnancy was really hard. Like she had, there was some like weird rash that she got on her feet, and they ended up saying like they thought it was because her liver was like congested, I think. And I forget what else. She had a bunch of weird stuff. She had like thrush, or no, that was with breastfeeding. Well, anyway, she was kind of worried about that because he was a C-section baby in particular. And when it came time to introduce like, cashews and pecans and almonds and that sort of stuff, they actually, like, she and her husband loaded up their baby and drove to the hospital, and they gave him like the lick of cashew butter or whatever. Like they fed it to him in the parking lot of the hospital because they were like, this way, if he goes into anaphylaxis, we could race right in the ER. And I was like, all right, that's like a little more neurotic than I would go. Yeah, that was
Seems
just like
stressful, like almost like
yeah.
sitting in the parking lot outside of like what the kid typically would eat.
Yeah, and they're
Like
like
outside of
holding
the
their breath.
typical eating environment, right?
Yeah, it was very bizarre. But again, I was like, I get that you have like some anxiety, just anxiety in general. And then also like some anxiety around your kiddo because of some of the difficulties with the pregnancy and the C-section and all that. Like, so again, it's like, I don't think that's intrinsically the worst thing. Like, hey, if this gives you comfort and makes the process easier, cool. But yeah, I think they did that like 2 or 3 times with a couple of different ones. I know they did with peanuts, and I think
Right.
maybe another one or two nuts that they like drove to the ER and sat there.
Right.
I was kind of the opposite. So we did, and I wouldn't say that I like adhered to any particular structure or like belief system. I didn't really read any books about it necessarily. I just kind of, but I would call what we did loosely baby led weaning, in the sense of like if Jess seemed curious about our food, we would like let her lick the spoon or lick the fork or something. So oddly, I think one of the very first things that we did that with for her, we had made, I think, pork chops, and then we made like a chimichurri sauce to go on it. And she seemed really, really curious, and I let her lick the chimichurri sauce off of my spoon. So it's, it's like, what, I forget now. Is it parsley or cilantro or some combination thereof, and like olive oil and maybe a little bit of lemon in the sauce? But like, I just let her lick that off my spoon. I think that was actually the first thing that she did. And then, we did do, when she was starting to get like actual calories from food and it wasn't just licking a spoon, we did like, Mike would make like pureed, carrots and peas, and then he also would make like homemade hummus, because at the time I wasn't doing sesame, so he would make these giant batches of homemade hummus and freeze a bunch of it. So he would start feeding her some of the homemade hummus. So it was just like chickpeas, olive oil, lemon juice, salt, and like a little bit of garlic was what we would do for that. We would omit the tahini because of my issue with the sesame at the time. But and then he would like mix up like a little bit of the carrots with the hummus or a little bit of the peas with the hummus. He made broccoli soup, and I put that in air quotes because it was more like halfway between a soup and just mashed up broccoli. But it was like a little bit of broth and a little bit of salt, and it was pretty good. She did that for a while. I think he made like black-eyed peas, and he would like mash them up and blend them up. But he would make things like in bigger batches and then freeze them in like little cubes. But yeah, those were a lot of her first foods. And then funny enough, again, similarly, like if she wanted something, we would let her like take stuff off our plate or lick a spoon for a while. One of her first clear favorite foods was crab cakes. So like I started playing around with making crab cakes at home because like my mom and I are both gluten-free and can't do dairy. And at the time, Mike was as well. And so we got like some canned crab meat, and I would mix it up with like gluten-free breadcrumbs and like mayo and eggs, and like kind of, I was playing with the recipe a lot. And I'd kind of like found something that worked, that we really liked. Not going to brag. My family now says that they prefer my crab cakes versus what you can get in a restaurant. So.
Wow.
Yes.
You should brag.
I know. So anyway, so I had made crab cakes that night, and my mom was like holding Jess in her arm and eating her crab cake that I gave her, and Jess was like 9 months old. Jess seemed very interested, so my mom was like, can I give her a bite? We're like, yeah, sure, why not? So she has a bite. She proceeded to eat, and it was like, it was the size of a large hamburger patty, the ones that I had made. She ate like 3/4 of my mom's crab cake. And my mom was like, okay, but now I don't have any food. So luckily she had gotten enough supplies that like I made a really big batch. So I was able to replace the crab cake and give my mom a new one. But yeah, Jess demolished like 3/4 of the crab cake. And, my mom was just like, she seems like she really likes it, and she's trying to reach for my fork. Should I give her more? I was like, keep giving her more, whatever. Like, see what she does. And she loved it.
Oh my gosh. Well, it's so funny you say that. I was at a Super Bowl party when we were in the well, I don't know if it wasn't actually at the Super Bowl. It was one of the preceding games. But we were at a family friend's house, and one of our close family friends has a daughter that's my age that has a little girl. So there's this little girl at this party. And, like, my parents just eat tons of, like, they're not, like, horrible eaters, but they do enjoy sugar and, like, sweet treats and that kind of thing. So my mom had, like, a little brownie on her plate, and this little girl, I guess she, like, doesn't eat a ton of sugar. Like, she just kind of, like, again, her parents are a little stricter, which I get, but her parents are a little stricter with sugar. So this little girl's all interested in her brownie. Like, she just knew it was good. You know, this little, like, 1.5-year-old girl's bopping around the party, and she's like, this looks good. So my mom asked her mom, like, can I give her a little piece? And her mom's like, okay, fine, whatever. So my mom breaks off a piece, and this little girl, like, loses her mind. You know, she's like, more. Like, again, like, all she kept saying is more. And she's, like, kind of shy, too. She's not necessarily the most, like, you know, rambunctious. I feel like she's kind of, like, not, like, COVID baby, but, like, COVID babies, I feel like, that grew up kind of in the time are already a little bit, like, people, and this is a party, like a Super Bowl party.
It's going to be a more introverted generation, for sure.
Right. And she, like, again, warmed up as the parties went on, because I went there a couple other times for more games, but this little girl just lost her mind for this brownie. And so my mom kept being like, can I give her a little bit more? Like, you know, to her mom. And her mom's like, fine. And then, like, literally she ate probably, like, the whole brownie. But this little girl would just, like, lost her mind over this brownie. And I think it's just funny how kids can get, like, locked into certain foods. And of course, like, sugar is obviously delicious, too. Brownies are delicious.
Yeah.
But it's just funny, because my mom said the little girl just, like, hung on her hip, like, the whole, it's kind of,
like, you're magical
in a weird
woman.
way. Right. Like, oh my gosh, this magical woman that fed me this brownie. But yeah, it's funny to me. It'll be interesting, I feel like, how we balance that, Armand and I, because, again, I'm not really a food police type person. But again, I don't necessarily want my kid eating robust amount of sugar, but I want them to still be able to enjoy good foods and, like, not have a complex around, you know, different foods. But Armand can sometimes be way more liberal with certain foods, so we'll have to probably balance each other out there.
I feel like, we're kind of the same. Like, we don't, like, I don't want Jess to have disordered eating kind of issues.
Right.
But also, you know, I don't want to have a ton of stuff around all the time.
Right.
So it's that balance of, like, okay, how much is reasonable? And then when you go to a party or an event, then, like, the ice cream or the cake or the whatever is that much more special because you don't get a ton of it at home. But you just reminded me of a story, and I definitely wanted to include this on the podcast. So I'm so glad I remembered this before we got to the end of the episode. Let's take a moment to make fun of my husband. Okay. So you mentioned that Armand could be a bit more liberal with the treats, and that made me think of the story that I wanted to tell you. So we should name this episode. We should name this one, like, just for fun, parentheses, transitions. Because it's your pseudo baby shower. And also, my office behind me is, like, empty, pretty much.
Right.
The last thing that I'm going to do after we record this episode is take down these paintings behind me and take down the other paintings in my front room. And then literally this whole office is packed up. So,
I feel like
the big move.
We need that song that's, like, from the graduation that's like, as we go on, we remember, that song.
Well, I'm going to ruin my own Instagram reel. So the last reel I'm going to record here is I'm going to do, like, one of those sped up ones, you know, where I'm, like, moving really quick, but I'm going to have it playing closing time in the background of the video. But that's literally the last one I'm going to record, is just me taking down the paintings. And then the next reel will be me, like, with the new setup at my house. because I'm transitioning to working from home. But anyway, so we're in the middle of this double move. It's insanity. Like, we have a mountain of cardboard boxes on our couch. We have a mountain of packed stuff in the dining room. It's absolute chaos. And so I'm going to be transitioning to working from home. And Mike and I have been kind of like joking about like, oh, it's going to be weird to see you so much, because normally I leave and I come here to the work office, as Jess has called it. I come here to the work office and I work and then I go home. So we're already kind of like joking with each other, like, crap, I have to see you more? Darn it. And so yesterday I was making my lunch, and I don't remember, like, Mike was in the kitchen doing his thing and I was doing my thing. And I was making like some eggs. So I've been doing this thing, frying up a couple of eggs and then putting them on top of a veggie burger. And the veggie burger is like the bread in this case.
Right.
And by veggie burger, I will confess, when I was a vegetarian, I ate the veggie burgers that tried to be like meat. Right, they were super unhealthy, and like the hydrolyzed, modified, scary ass Frankenfood soy protein isolate stuff. Now, when I eat veggie burgers, I seek out the ones that have like little bits of sweet potato and beans and stuff in them. So they're a little healthier. But so I was, making the eggs and the veggie burger, and then I put like a bit of mayo on it and some lettuce, and it's kind of like a weird little sandwich that I make. So I was making that for my lunch. And then Mike was behind me on like the other counter surface doing something.
Right.
And I turned around, and Amy, I'm not even exaggerating when I tell you this. He had put like 6 tablespoons of strawberry jelly into a bowl and then had a big blob of peanut butter on top of that. And I turn around and I was like, and he's about to walk out of the room with it. And I'm like, whoa, 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 whoa. What is this? And he's like, what? And he starts, getting all defensive. I was like, wait a minute. Whoa. I was like, this is at least 4 tablespoons of jelly that you have. Do you have any idea how much sugar that is? He's like, well, no, it's not. It's not 4 tablespoons. Yeah. And I was like, okay, hold on. And luckily it was a glass container. So I hold up this like glass bowl or container that he had it in. It was like a flat bottom, like a Pyrex,
Yep.
And I held up the 1/4 cup measuring cup, because 1/4 cup is 4 tablespoons.
Right.
And I held them up and I was like, oh, it's more. It's like 50% bigger than I thought it was when I compare it now. I was like, oh my God, you are going to eat 6 tablespoons of strawberry jelly. That is so much sugar. He's like, no, it's not that much. You're exaggerating. Yeah. And he's like, it's not that much sugar. I'm like, whoa, wait a minute. And I go to the refrigerator. There's 9 grams of sugar per tablespoon.
Oh my
He
gosh,
was getting ready to demolish 60 grams of sugar.
Oh my gosh.
And I was just like, whoa. Like, this is why married men live longer than unmarried men, first of all. I throw that in his face all the time. All the time, because I'm like, I'm watching out for you. Good thing. But I think that this actually, look, I told people this was not going to be an academic conversation, but I lied, clearly, because we've talked about a few things that are kind of actually pertaining to our field. I think that probably a lot of people who are struggling to lose weight or control their blood sugar, of which both my husband has struggled with to a degree. I think that there's probably a lot of people who think that they're eating healthy, but they're way overdoing it on some things that they deem to be healthy. Because I will say, like, it's like the organic strawberry spread from Costco. Like, it's organic, like the first ingredient is strawberries. Like, you would think that it's healthy, and it's fine if it's like 1 tablespoon of this jelly put on like, some bread with some peanut butter. But I shit you not, he was going to eat 6 tablespoons of this jelly. And then he was all bent out of shape. And he's like, fine, I'll just eat half and then I'll put half of it in the fridge for tomorrow. Yeah. And I was just like, my God, I saved you from diabetes. And I'm picturing, I'm like, this is what's going to happen when I work from home. I'm going to be discovering stuff like this. And I'm going to be like, oh my God, did you do this? And I didn't even know this. So anyway, I would kick it to the RD in the house. Have you seen that also be a pattern that like people think that they're eating healthy, but they're overdoing it on the things that they deem to be healthy?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely see that. I even think I can see that sometimes, like, when people go to the extremes, like, you know, the keto side, which I know we've talked about, it's like, they're willing to eat a plate full of bacon, but, like, half a banana is, like,
the devil.
Gonna kill them. So, you know, I think there's always these extremes. It's funny, because Armand, my husband, isn't necessarily, like, a sweets person. Like, he isn't necessarily, like, into sugar or, like, sweets that much. He has his moments, but, like, again, that's typically not the direction he goes to. He's more like a pizza, mac and cheese.
Like a
fried,
savory, fatty, savory, salty.
Right. Kind of savory type stuff. And he's not very good about eating his vegetables. So it's like, it's always a bit of a struggle where it's like, okay, I'm like, you have to eat a bite of it. Like, it's gonna be him and Cece, our daughter, that are gonna be, like, adding vegetables together. Like, I'm gonna be coaching both of them, because, and he does like some vegetables. He likes, again, the starchier things. He likes spinach. He does like kind of dark leafy greens. But yeah, he struggles.
Which is funny, because that's the one that a lot of normal people struggle with, is like the dark leafy kind of bitter stuff.
Right.
Is a turn off for a lot of other people. How funny.
Right. Yeah, but he's like he's a big cheese guy. I think, like, again, anything with cheese is gonna be up his alley. Right.
I would also say I lean that direction more also. My one, like, sugary thing that I will crave is chocolate. But other than that, like, sign me up for something like cheesy, bready, fried, salty any day of the week. Mike is more of the sugar person. Like, I've joked with him that he's a sugar addict. But did I ever tell you? So I was really obsessed with Bath and Body Works for, like, a good chunk of my life.
I think I remember that. I recall this.
Yes.
You doused your body in Bath and Body Works forever.
Well, there was one scent in particular that I was really into. I think it was either like brown sugar or like sugar cookie or something, but literally you put it on and you smell like a giant walking sugar cookie.
Right.
And Mike swears up and down. He's like, I swear that's part of how you like lured me in, because I was enchanted by the fact that you smelled like a sugar cookie. And I was like, yep, gotcha. But yeah, he's more of the sugar person. I'm more of like the other big thing that I crave when I want something junky is potato chips. Like, just the salt, the crunch, the fried, like all of that. Just, sign me up. But I will say, here's a strategy that you might not embrace, but in case you do, I will share.
Right.
If you can get your child to judge him a little bit for his lack of eating vegetables and take your side, you could play this to your advantage. So, like, just as an example, Jess really loves the Berenstain Bears. Yeah. And we have like 30 of their books. They're all great. But there was one about junk food. And like, and if you guys haven't read these books in a long time. So always what happens is that Mama Bear is the voice of reason. And she's like observing the behavior that needs to change. And that it's always the cubs and Papa Bear who are doing, whatever it is. So like in the Berenstain Bears' trouble with chores, it's those three that are slacking off on their chores, and Mom is getting pissed at them because they're not doing chores. In the junk food book, the problem with junk food or the trouble with junk food, it's brother, sister, and Papa Bear who are overindulging on junk food and not exercising. And then Mama is the one who thinks it's a problem. So that's like the pattern in all these books. But in the junk food one, like, they go to the doctor and she explains like healthy eating and they like, the cubs are like motivated to change their ways. And it's oftentimes Papa Bear who has a harder time changing his habits. And, so in this whole book, it's like all of them are getting healthier, but especially Papa is struggling. And like, they run a 5K race or whatever. And then Papa Bear wants to like go eat a bunch of junk afterwards. And they're like, no, Papa, have some carrot sticks instead. But so I just, like, in part to screw with my parents, I was like, well, Jess, you should take this book to Grandma and Grandpa's house and read it to Grandpa, because Grandpa has a big sweet tooth and he needs to learn this lesson. So I kid you not, my 6-year-old took this book to Grandma and Grandpa's house and like made Grandpa read it to her and then was trying to like educate him for the whole weekend. But honestly, my dad would sustain his life on pizza, Pepsi, beer, cheese doodles or like cheesy puffs.
Yeah.
And any sort of like candy or sugar.
Right.
You know, like Oreos, M&Ms, Reese's. Oh, and Reese's peanut butter cups. That would be his drug of choice. That would be his entire diet if he didn't have us to keep him healthier. So it was just really perfect. But it's funny because like doing that, it was just really funny to hear her lecturing Grandpa about like, Grandpa, you should eat so much junk. And it was really funny to watch that. But also I'm like, good. The brainwashing is kicking in.
Right.
Good. Because like having her educate somebody else on eating healthy is further ingraining it in her brain. And I'm like, the brainwashing is working. Yes. Right. So if you want to brainwash your child into teaming up with you and trying to influence Armand positively, you have my blessing because it does seem to work to some degree.
Yeah, so I think my strategy, I'd like to create some sort of narrative around gut bugs. So like, you know, you have these gut pals in your gut that get really hungry. Like, you don't want them starving, do you? Like, you know, you have these buddies in your gut that you gotta feed. We feed Chip every day. You gotta feed your gut buddies.
Well, and similarly, I don't know if I ever told you how I was potty trained, but apparently the thing that sealed the deal for me was that my parents got me Care Bear underwear. And they literally told me, you don't want to pee on your friends, right?
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
And I immediately, from that moment on, I was potty trained because I was like,
that's when your puckering strings got really strong.
Exactly. Because they said, you don't want to pee on your friends, right? And I was like any true 80s child, I was obsessed with the Care Bears and like the Care Bear stare. I would just cruise around like family parties and stuff. And I would lift up my t-shirt and be like, Care Bear stare. And everybody. Gosh. Yeah.
Nice.
Very weird to go back and watch old cartoons and old movies, by the way, and realize even stuff that's not that old. Now we're going on a new tangent. Realizing that certain movies and TV shows would never get produced in this day and age because they're not like PC. I recently introduced my husband to Daria, which was one of my favorite shows growing up. And, you know, I think like the first season started in like 1998 or something. Mm-hmm. So it ran like when I was in like middle school and high school kind of was when Daria was popular. But like we've watched all the episodes now and we're working back through watching it a second time. And even just like some of the stuff that pops up, we're laughing at because we're like, yeah, this wouldn't be made today.
Oh my god.
Like some of this is not appropriate based off of like today's standards. Or like there are bits where like they had a cyber cafe in Lawndale. Right. And we're like, oh wow. This is back before the day when everybody had a computer, or like practically everybody had a computer. Like there was a cyber cafe.
Right.
They didn't have cell phones. They had to like take turns using the phone. So Quinn would be tying up the line, talking to boys and talking to like the fashion club friends all night. And like nobody else could use the phone because they had one landline phone. Yeah, it's been really trippy to watch that. But similarly, you watch movies and shows, you know, like cartoons and stuff from the 80s, or like, you know, I revisited Fraggle Rock not all that long ago. And you're just like, this is real effing weird. Like, this is the stuff I grew up on. It's no wonder I'm weird.
Right. Well, I know. I always feel like what were my big shows growing up? I think I watched like some of the traditional ones, like Barney I was into. God. Like when I was real young. We didn't have cable or anything. So like, I feel like some of the ones like Hey Arnold or like some of the Nickelodeon type stuff, I never, like we only got cable when I was going into 9th grade. So like, again, any of the PBS type shows, but like I'd watch Guiding Light with my mom, which was like a legit soap opera. Like, it was totally not age appropriate. It was funny because my parents were weird about like some shows, but then like not others. Like, why are you weird about me watching this show, but then okay with me watching Guiding Light, where like, you know, there's sexual innuendo, like sex everywhere, and I'm like 7 watching it with my mom, you know?
Also, at what point did the obsession with Baywatch kick in? Because I remember
that's
you said
6 to 7, around the same time with Guiding Light. My mom and I would watch that, which again, there's, again, tons of sex and things in that show too. So again, it cracks me up that like, that those shows were okay, but like some of the other shows were not okay. It's funny. I feel like there wasn't any consistency across shows that my parents would be like, oh, those shows are cool.
It might have just been like, I want to watch this, therefore I'm not going to veto it, because then I get to watch it.
Well, and I think too, it was more like my mom. I think my mom was more lenient about like, oh, my little buddy's coming to like watch this show with me.
Yeah.
And that's cool. Like, it's kind of like, she won't understand it. Whatever, you know? So, because I got really into Guiding Light at one point where, like, I was, like, telling people storylines, you know, just, like, 7-year-old of, like, oh, Cassie. You know, I remember this one character, Cassie. She's actually, like, a bigwig on, I think, General Hospital now. Like, again, she's been in, like, soap operas for 30 years. But, like, Cassie married a prince or something, or, like, some sort of, like, royalty in another country. And that guy died, and like, again, I remember all this, the storylines were crazy, and I don't know, it was just really funny. I'd get into it because that would be like when I'd come home from school too. So like right when I would come home from school, my mom and I would watch it. It'd be on at like 3:00 in the afternoon, or 2:30 or something like that.
Well, similarly, my mom, she doesn't watch it anymore, thank God, but for a good chunk of time there, she would watch Days of Our Lives. And like, yeah, like Sammy and Marlena got kidnapped like 87 times on that show. Like, it was always the two characters, Marlena and Hope. They were constantly getting kidnapped. Like, they never had a normal life once, those two characters. They were always just kidnapped in a prison somewhere. And it was always by like the same dude. Every single time. It was like, gee, I wonder who kidnapped Marlena this time. Same guy it always is, but they never arrest him. Yeah. And I watched that a bit. I wasn't like maybe ultra into it, but I think I was a little bit older than you when she was going through her Days of Our Lives kick. But you triggered a memory that I'll share too. So you know that Eric Clapton song? And I'm just going to preface, I'm not musically inclined, people, so do not judge too much. But it's like, my only recollection of it, it's the cocaine one. It's where he's like, I don't even know the words now. Something, 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 cocaine. You know that song?
I do not know that song, but it sounds like a true Grammy Award-winning song.
It probably was. But anyway, I think it's she don't like, or maybe she don't mind. I don't even know. But anyway.
And then cocaine.
Cocaine.
She don't mind cocaine.
I think that growing up, I assumed that it was she don't like cocaine. Right. But I think it's actually she don't mind cocaine. Okay. I'll look it up in a second. But anyway, that
very
was like
different meanings.
Way different. Well, similarly, I will share, you know, the Beatles song, Eleanor Rigby. And there's a line where it says, all the lonely people, where do they all come from?
Right.
I kid you not. Up until about 5 years ago, keep in mind I'm 35. So up until about the age of 30, I was convinced that song said, all the lovely people, where do they all come from? And it was only in my adulthood that my husband revealed, he was like, wait, what did you just say? And I was like, yeah, all the lovely people. And he was like, no, all the lonely people. And my husband's a big like music geek. And he was like, couldn't you tell by like the chords that they're playing that it's a, you know, like the tone of the actual music.
Like the downer.
Yeah, it's like, it's a sad song. Couldn't you tell? And I was like, no, like I don't,
Right.
like I just don't really register that so much. But I was like, no, I just always thought it was all the lovely people. Where do they all come from? And he's like, no. It's a sad song. I was like, oh, but going back to the cocaine song. So hold on. First of all, we need to know. Inquiring minds need to know about this Eric Clapton song. Okay, so hold on. All these stupid pop-ups. Oh, no, I was wrong twice, actually. The lyric is, she don't lie, she don't lie, she don't lie. Cocaine.
Okay.
So anyway, so it's she don't lie. So actually, my original hypothesis was closer. Is she don't like. But anyway, that song was like my dad's ultimate brain lesion growing up. Literally until I was like 19 years old. Every time that song came on the radio, my dad would spastically and frantically and like reach for the knob on the car and quickly turn it to another channel. And finally, I think I was a freshman in college. I was like 18 or 19. And finally, my mom and I started cracking up. And she was like, Steve, she's 19 years old.
Right.
It's okay. She knows that cocaine exists. Chill out. And he was like, and he still gets a little bit spazzy about it. But that, for whatever reason, that was like the one song where he was like, oh, and he would immediately turn it off.
Oh my
And
gosh.
he did this into like my young adulthood. But we listened to classic rock all the time. They would put on I-100, the classic rock station. Like all day, every day, everywhere we drove, we were listening to I-100. So when you're listening to a classic rock station, that Eric Clapton song comes on like twice a day at least. And every single time he would have a spastic moment and frantically turn it off because he's like, no, my child cannot know that cocaine exists.
Oh my gosh.
Like, it was just really funny. So anyway, but yeah, now I got to tell you about by Eleanor Rigby, All the Lovely People, brain lesion. I just saw that pop up on Facebook Memories the other day, actually, because I posted about it and was like, guys, my world is shattered.
I like your version of the world a little better.
Right? Optimistic. Similarly, Eric Clapton was singing about a girl who did not like cocaine. And he was talking about how she did not like cocaine. And it was like, you know, you go, girl. Good for you. You don't like cocaine.
No to drugs. Your leader would be thrilled with you.
It was also, similarly, my parents were really into Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers. And he's got the song about Last Dance with Mary Jane. It took me until my adulthood to realize that Mary Jane was code for drugs. And it wasn't actually a girl named Mary Jane. Like, I just didn't know for the longest time. And then I think Mike told me about that and was like, you know that Mary Jane is, I don't even know. Is it marijuana? I don't even know.
Yep.
Now. Yeah.
Yep.
So he was like, you know that's code for pot, right? I was like, no.
Right.
I don't know.
You mean it's not a lovely woman named Mary Jane?
Yeah. Well, yeah, I thought it was like a love song about this girl that he once knew. Nope.
About the girl from Spider-Man.
About
Mary Jane
apparently,
Watson.
About drugs.
Oh my gosh.
But yeah, I'm trying to think. So first of all, though, I need to take us on another tangent. And by the way, I'm going to be rude and just check my phone occasionally. Because I'm moving out of this office, I've been rapidly selling things on Facebook Marketplace. And I have one final pickup. She hasn't told me exactly when she's coming, but like it ballpark in the next half hour. So I'm just going to check my phone every now and then to see when she messages me. But let's go back. If you have not experienced the pure, unadulterated joy that is late 90s and early 2000s Nicktoons, oh my God. Like, Hey Arnold, classic.
Yeah.
The Angry Beavers, classic still and amazing. Yeah. Invader Zim, same voice actor, by the way, that plays in one of the Angry Beavers.
What about Doug? Did you watch Doug? Was that a big...
Doug, okay, there's some controversy though. Yes, I loved Doug, and I could still sing the song for you. But Doug was a Nicktoon. And then at some point, like they stopped airing it, and then Disney picked up the rights, and then there was like 2 final seasons on Disney. Not as good. Because it lost that like Nickelodeon quirkiness, and it became like a Disney cartoon. So it's okay. It'll do in a pinch. And like they kind of aged up ever so slightly. They went from being in, I don't even know, like 6th grade to maybe like 8th or 9th grade, I think.
Right.
So it's okay, but the original seasons of Doug was far superior in my opinion, and the opinion of many other elder millennials for that matter. What other ones? Oh, the Wild Thornberries. That was a classic.
Oh yeah, I remember that.
That was good.
Remember the little brother that would just be like, Donnie.
Yeah, Donnie.
Whatever his name was.
Yep, Donnie. Yep. I'm trying to think. I've like put on the spot
I feel like
now.
I've seen some of these because, again, I had friends, but we didn't have it at
my Cat Dog. Have you seen Cat Dog?
I know what it is, but I've probably seen bits and pieces of episodes.
Alone in the World with Little Cat Dog. Oh,
yep.
So good. So good. It's all of these are just so stupid, but that's what makes them great. That's what makes them great. And it's like the nostalgia as well. But I remember my mom, so I recently showed Jess Cat Dog, and my mom complained still. But even back then in the day, in like the late 90s or whatever, my mom would be like, "This is so stupid. Where does it pee? Like, there's no butthole. There's no urinal. Like, how does this thing go to the bathroom?"
Right.
And that was just like the glory of the stupidity of Cat Dog.
Right.
But I showed Jess some episodes of Cat Dog on Paramount Plus, and my mom was still like, it was like we were transported 25 years ago. She was
traumatized again.
Yeah, just all over again. She was like, "Oh no." And then similarly, I showed Jess some episodes of The Angry Beavers, which was my personal fave, because it's like so dumb. It's so dumb. And my mom immediately was like, "No, not The Angry Beavers."
Right.
So yeah, I'm actively torturing my mom with these Nicktoons again, and they are just as good as they once were.
Oh my gosh.
So good.
Not as good as Baywatch and Guiding Light, I'm sorry.
I don't know. To each their own. Did you watch Daria at all? You might have been a teeny bit young, I guess, for Daria.
No, I remember like there were some things on ABC that I'd watch that was like TGIF, like Sabrina the Teenage Witch. I remember getting into that, or like Boy Meets World. Those were on ABC on Friday nights. Or Thursdays.
I was the primo age for Boy Meets World. And I never watched. I think that one on like the WB or something. I remember specifically we did not have Warner Brothers when we did get satellite dish eventually. I think we got satellite when I was in like middle school. But I remember specifically we did not have the plan that included WB. And that's why whenever we went to hotels, my mom and I would look for Gilmore Girls, because we were like, "Oh, I remember that show. It was really good, but we don't get that channel at home." So whenever we were like on a trip or at a hotel, we would try to watch the Gilmore Girls, because that was like our only opportunity to watch Gilmore Girls. Now I've seen all the episodes. I binged it on Netflix. So now I'm totally caught up. But at the time, I just watched Gilmore Girls in little spontaneous chunks. But I feel like maybe that's why I never got into Boy Meets World, or maybe it was just I was into other shows.
That one I think was an ABC. It was an ABC. Same thing with Sabrina. But the WB I got the WB. That's what Smallville was on. So you missed Smallville
I was
too.
Gonna say. Yep.
But then
the
WB like blew up and then became like 3 different channels.
Okay.
And so that's what happened with that. Because in the 5th season of Smallville, they were a CW show. That's kind of one of the channels that it diverged to.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah. So many good classics. Jess is getting into SpongeBob now. That was another great one.
Oh my gosh.
But she's a little bit young. They do like call each other morons and call each other names, and it's like not a great kid show in retrospect. But again, like, this is how old I am. SpongeBob didn't start until I was in like middle school. So
see, like, I remember watching, like, Pinky and the Brain, which was kind of a weird show. Did you ever watch that show?
Yes. I had the great idea. So I told you my best friend, Mamie, is itty bitty teeny tiny human being. And I'm very tall and very not teeny tiny. So I have this photo series called Big Things, Little Things to represent us. And I've been doing this for years. And I had the idea that for Halloween, we should be the Pinky and the Brain. One year, because like also Mamie was always the one that was like just like a head full of ideas and full of
Right.
ambition and full of like, I'm going to conquer the world kind of energy. And I was always like the very, just, I don't know, like a
Right.
very kapha, just like very, just like content where you plant me. Like,
Right.
okay, I'll just go along with whatever she's scheming. And I was like, no, this would be perfect. We didn't end up getting the costumes together, but I thought that would be amazing for Halloween one year. But yeah, that was on, what was it, the Animaniacs?
Yes, Animaniacs.
Yeah. What about Tiny Toon Adventures? Do you remember that?
No, not really.
I don't remember what channel that would have been on. I guess WB it would have had to have been. That was pretty good. I still have the Tiny Toon Adventures movie on DVD. I had it I had illegally downloaded it on like Kazaa or one of those kind of programs back in the day. And then Mike helped me.
God bless Kazaa, because I think my brother illegally downloaded stuff from Smallville from Kazaa for me at one point.
Pretty much. Similarly, I have all of the Daria episodes somewhere. Oh, what about I just had the epiphany. Similarly, I've got a lot of just crap put on CDs now. A lot of it's anime. But another one, Kenan and Kel, so painfully stupid.
Yeah,
absolutely painfully stupid, and yet a classic.
What was the burger one? I've seen that movie a bunch.
Oh yeah,
Good Burger.
Good Burger, right? Yep. Yeah, and that was an offshoot from All That, which was like the kids' version of Saturday Night Live.
Right.
But similarly, like the early seasons were really good, and again, painfully stupid, but really amusing. And then the Good Burger segment was like a segment from that show.
Right.
Welcome to Good Burger, home of the Good Burger. Can I take your order? Right. I didn't say it with the proper tone of voice, but you get the idea.
Yeah.
So see, they just don't make them like that anymore. Do you?
Right.
But that's okay. Everything's getting rebooted anyway, so
right.
Either they're going to reboot everything, or they're going to have it available on platforms so that us millennials can get us our kick of nostalgia. But yeah, True. I'll just like put Daria on a marathon now. Jess is a little bit old, or she's a little bit young for it, because it's very like, it's more dry humor, and it's a more of a like witty, sarcastic, occasionally mean sense of humor that Daria tends to have. But she don't give a fuck about nothing, and she doesn't care about your feelings. She doesn't have time for your shit, is what I'd say about Daria. Yeah. Oh, and then as a side note, I know, so you're a little bit younger than me. So you were born in the 90s, right? Technically?
1990.
Okay, that's what I thought. But you had older siblings. So did you watch any shows or movies, like kids' movies from the 1980s? Because all of them universally are screwed up. Like, if you go back and watch like Labyrinth, or like The Never-Ending Story, or The Last Unicorn, which I know I've mentioned on this podcast before because it traumatized me, like all of them have this very distinct, like spooky, haunt you in your dreams until you die vibe.
Right.
Like everything is so
again, like, I don't think I really got into any of those. I don't know if my siblings did either. So, yeah, I don't think I really dipped into the 80s movies so much. I feel like I remember one of the first movies I went to was Lion King, like, in the theater.
Mm-hmm.
I think that was, like, 94 or 93.
Seems about
something,
right.
Something in there. I do remember going to that premiere. But yeah, I don't think I got really into that kind of thing. My parents weren't like super big on TV or movies like either. And again, that's why we didn't really have cable. So maybe that had something to do with it too. Like, it's not that we watched movies and shows and things like that, but they just weren't like lovers or super into it. I
would say we watched a fair amount of TV growing up. But I had this weird balance of like, I was always either watching TV,
right,
or I was like outside getting filthy and playing with the horses and the cats and stuff in the barn. So it was like two very extreme worlds.
Right.
And I would do other stuff, but like that, those were the two ways I spent a lot of my time. Well, if you ever want some recommendations for good, horrifying 80s children's movies, those are some pretty classic ones. Again, The Neverending Story was one of my favorites, and I would watch that repeatedly. And then Labyrinth, like both of those, you watch them and you're like this passed as a children's movie back in the 80s, huh? Oh, okay. And even like I found the intro segment or whatever with the theme song of the old Care Bears show and the old My Little Pony show. Not the reboot of My Little Pony, the old one from the 80s that I used to watch. And like even that had some creepy vibes of like the bad guys or the villains or whatever that are coming to like get the ponies or something. And you're like, oh,
right.
Like, God, well, I watched this when I was like 4.
I remember the one that really freaked my little sister out. And I could see why, like I remember she was maybe 5 or 6 watching Mulan, like maybe when that was coming out. But like the Huns in that movie, like she had bad nightmares of like the Huns. She really struggled with Mulan. But again, like I think that would be more suited for like slightly older kids.
Mulan is still one of my favorite Disney movies.
I love Mulan. It's so great.
Oh, and that song, the I'll Make a Man Out of You song, like that still pumps me up to this day.
Yeah,
if I need to like muster up the courage to do something, I will put that song on. Like still, and I'm in my mid-30s.
Well, we have these like I forget what they're actually called at the gym, but we have like these sticks that you can hold that like help you if you're doing a certain stretch or can help you align your body in a certain way. I don't know all the ins and outs of them, but there's these sticks that we use. Okay. There's some sticks that we use sometimes. They're just like plain, some sort of.
Yeah, I'm picturing a broomstick, but without the broom part.
Yeah. It's similar to that. I think it's called a dowel. That's what they technically call it. It's a dowel, but it's like a broomstick without the bristles at the end. But every time we get that out at the gym, I have to do like a couple swings and think of that song in my head. Yep.
Now what about, I have a very important child rearing question to ask you. It's very serious. So I want you to take your time with the response because you could alienate viewers from our podcast depending on your response.
Okay.
And in my opinion, there is a right and a wrong response. When you show your daughter Star Wars, what order are you going to go in? Are you going to go in the order they were released or in the order, like chronologically in the story, starting with episodes 1, 2, and 3, Anakin Skywalker's story, and then to the original trilogy, and then to the newer movies? I'm going to judge you based on your response.
Probably.
Take your time. Take your time. No pressure.
Again, it's interesting because I remember being so into like the new Star Wars growing up.
Oh, yeah.
But I would probably have them watch The New Hope first. So the 4th, episode 4.
That is the correct answer.
Okay.
Thank you. Okay, round of applause. There's no pressure. I fully agree because I feel like the first 3 movies, personally, I feel like I mean like episodes 1, 2, and 3. I feel like they're not good enough on their own. Like they're not compelling enough to keep watching these long ass movies.
Right.
If you start with the first 3, you kind of like you get into the world, you get into it enough that you're like invested, you know?
Right.
And then you're like, oh, I want to know his backstory. And then you can backtrack and learn how Darth Vader became Darth Vader. But if you start with those 3 movies, he's kind of just like a whiny little bitch in a lot of it. And like a lot of it is just, and like Jar Jar is so annoying that after like half a movie, you're going to be like, I'm not into it. I don't like Star Wars. And it's like, no, you can't say that you don't like Star Wars if you haven't seen the original trilogy. You have to get like invested in the franchise first.
Right.
And then you can do the newer ones.
Agreed.
But yeah, episodes 1, 2, and 3 are not good, if I remember right. I haven't watched them in years. But I've rewatched episodes 4, 5, and 6 like numerous times.
Right.
My mom was in college when I think the first one came out. I forget which one it was. She and her best friend Martha went to see one of the Star Wars movies in the theaters, I think 18 times.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
What?
Yeah, they were obsessed, and they went back to the theaters like 18 times.
Oh my God. That's wild.
Meanwhile, like, it sounds like they didn't really have any money in college, because she continually tells me that they sustained themselves on Kool-Aid and popcorn all through college. Like, that's all they ate. And the occasional, like, peanut butter sandwich. So meanwhile, they're spending all of their movies going to see Star Wars in the theaters, which just cracks me up.
That's so funny.
Gosh, I think it was like 78 or 79 or something. Hold on one second. I'm just going to text. So because this office is on the ground floor and I share, in my building, there's a Domino's, an insurance agency, and a UPS store. It's a moderately busy parking lot. So I've always been in the habit, since I've been in this building, I've been in the habit of locking the door if I'm like back here, especially if I have headphones on, because I don't want some rando to walk in off the street and just like barge in my office and surprise me. But it's occurring to me, I have the door locked. So I'm going to just quickly text this woman and let her know that she has to text me when she arrives. Otherwise, she's going to be locked out of my office.
Right.
So 1 second. But you can fill the airtime if you would like. No pressure.
Oh, man. I don't know what I want to fill the airtime with, girl.
You can say how beautiful I look today.
Oh, you just look ravishing today. I don't know. I'm excited about it's kind of like gets a little raunchy at times, but I'm excited about the Bridgerton coming back. I'm into period pieces. That's probably I don't think you're as much into period stuff as me.
I feel like I haven't gotten into any period pieces. By the way, like, can we just acknowledge that what conjures up in the brain is menstrual cycle period, not a time period. But they need to come up with a different way of describing this genre. But yeah, I haven't gotten into them. I think like if anything, it has to be like a different world. Like it could be medieval, but it's like a different world. So like, Game of Thrones or The Witcher or something like that, where it's like, it's medieval, but it's like medieval plus magic. Or it's, it's not just like Earth 1942 or Earth.
Well, you might like Outlander then, because there's time travel. But it's
I have
fairly.
It bookmarked.
Yeah, you should watch Outlander. That one's good. I like Downton Abbey, but that's not magical per se.
Yeah, I prefer the magical.
Bridgerton is a good one. I like the Jane Austen stuff, like the movies. An old TV series of that. Maybe I just want to be British or like UK based. I don't know.
Well, I've told you about my British boyfriend, right?
I think you have.
British boyfriend is a British guy who lives in Japan, and he makes videos about Japan, but he has a British accent and he's from England, and I call him British boyfriend because I've watched all of his videos numerous times and I get so excited when he posts a new video. His real name is Chris Broad, but again, I refer to him as British boyfriend. And he and another YouTuber did a video recently where like apparently in Japan, they have like a British theme park. Like it's not a theme park. I don't think it has rides, but it's literally like a replica of like a little town in England, complete with like a little teeny kind of manor and like the houses that have like all of the decor. But he and his friend who's from Wales went to this and like spent the night in one of the like, hotel room kind of accommodations. And they were just amazed. They were like, "Oh my God, I think my grandma had this exact sofa. I think my cousin has this exact carpet."
Oh my gosh.
Like, I have a friend whose house, like the woodwork and stuff looked exactly like this. Like they were saying that accuracy wise, it's like 10 out of 10.
Oh my gosh.
And it feels like being in England. But they did criticize that they did not give them very much tea. For the whole room, they got like 4 tea bags of English breakfast tea. And they were like, that's inadequate.
Oh my gosh.
But for the mere price of a plane ticket to Japan, you can also go to England. So you can go to 2 countries at once, kind of.
Wow. Well, I have to pee soon. My pregnancy bladder is reaching its capacity.
Well, I don't have pregnancy bladder, but I did down this whole water bottle. So similarly, I'm going to have to let you go momentarily as well.
Yes.
Any thoughts or random? Oh, and perfect. And she said she's going to be here in about 10 minutes or so. So that actually works out perfectly because I've got to do my last pickup. And then, like I said, once we hang up, these paintings are coming down. So
wow.
You will not see this exact view again.
Kissing your office goodbye.
I know. It's strange. It's, new phases of life. You're entering the parenthood phase of life. Good luck to you. It's a wild ride.
As we go on, we remember all the times we had together. I should whip out my guitar and try to learn this on the guitar.
Well, but like I said,
thank you for all listening to my performance. Yes.
Hey, they also had to listen to my rendition of the Eric Clapton Cocaine song, and there's one more, the Beatles song that I did. Right. So yeah, this was a very musical episode. But I think that this is a good place to wrap up. So again, guys, thank you so much for tuning in. This was a non-educational episode, but also moderately educational. We talked about some stuff that fits into the world of nutrition and health and healing in general. And we just had a lot of really random little anecdotes and stories and songs along the way. So thank you for playing along with my poop hat. Make sure that you assemble the other poop hat and go put it on Armand and tell him that one's for him. And then if you were so inclined to send me a picture of Chip wearing his hat, I would not be opposed to that. Just throwing that out there.
Okay.
For what it's worth. So
if Chip is very finicky with his...
Well, that's why you have to be lowering it on his head and have the phone ready so that the moment it touches his fur, you can start snapping pictures. That's the technique.
That's not a bad idea.
But yes, I fully expect a photo later with the poop hat. And then, we will see you in the next episode of the IBS Freedom Podcast, where we will talk about something related to health more directly. But thank you so much for joining us for this Just for Fun episode. Congratulations to Amy and her nugget in the making. She's a cooking it, she's a brewing it, and we will all look forward to pictures and stories about motherhood and adorable baby photos on Instagram in the coming months. But we will see you right back here for another more educational episode of the podcast very, very soon. Bye, all.